Discover how one little girl's touching request transformed a millionaire's heart forever. Jake Sullivan glanced at his watch, the diamonds encrusted into the gleaming gold of the timepiece almost too bright against the subdued tones of Millhaven's park. He had come from a world where profits outweighed purpose, where success was measured in dollars, not humanity. But today, wrapped in the mundane beauty of small-town life, he found himself strangely unmoored. The laughter of children echoed around him, a reminder of innocence he had long lost to corporate ambition. A gnawing emptiness spread through his chest, and for a brief moment, the crisp, tailored fabric of his suit felt suffocating. Just then, he noticed her, a little girl, around 8, with untamed curly hair peeking out from an oversized baseball cap. Her eyes sparkled with expectation, and her small hands clutched a colorful piece of paper that read, "Help my grandma." As she approached him, Jake felt his chest tighten. Beneath the well-crafted persona of a billionaire was a man battling internal vacuity. Her eyes flickered a light he hadn't allowed himself to see in years. "Excuse me, sir," she said, summoning an innocence that cut through his corporate armor. Her voice carried a weight he hadn't prepared for. "My grandma is sick. If I don't get help for her, I don't know what will happen." It was simple, yet the raw plea twisted within him, igniting confusion and disbelief. At that moment, Jake was both the powerful tycoon and a boy who once feared the shadow of loss. As the initial shock faded, Jake planned his response with the icy precision he reserved for business negotiations. Surely, he could write a check, help the girl, and walk away. That would ease the discomfort creeping at the edges of his mind. "I can make a donation," he said nonchalantly, brushing the paper aside like a troublesome invoice. But as the girl's hopeful expression dimmed, Jake felt an echo of something dark and unsettling. Was this truly his only answer? Days later, he found himself in the clinic, his previously unyielding exterior cracking under the weight of reality. The sterile walls felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the playful chatter outside. Jake's heartbeat quickened, the laughter of children now felt like a distant echo in a realm he no longer understood. Then he saw her, Lily. Her frail grandmother lay in the bed, pale as the sheets that cocooned her. Jake could hear Lily's tender words, feathery whispers of love that trembled in the air. In that moment, Jake confronted layers of emotional turmoil. Was he merely a man with money, perpetuating a system that failed countless families like hers? Each story he glanced over in the clinic embodied the nagging discomfort of his past choices. The numbers that once validated his success now suffocated him. Hypocrisy launched a furious assault on his conscience. He had built his fortune on short-term gains, ignoring the chaotic ripple effect that devastated lives in Millhaven. As he observed the fierce love Lily exuded, he felt a pang of anguish. Was he really a protector, or simply a spectator in a community that desperately needed more than his passive contributions? The reality of what he had always dismissed as mere statistics loomed large. What if his wealth meant nothing if it couldn't restore hope in their eyes? The walls of his gilded existence began to close in, a reminder that he was rapidly losing sight of what truly mattered. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Caught in turmoil, Jake's thoughts spiraled. He faced a crescendo of conflict within him. Every memory of cutthroat deals, the steady clink of coin, became a taint on his soul. Memories of his own lonely upbringing fell from their idyllic facade, revealing a man longing for redemption amidst a legacy of greed. How had he become a product of an insatiable vice? As Lily's courageous spirit flickered in his mind, Jake confronted the dissonance in his life. The question loomed larger than ever: could he shatter his own gilded cage, face the truths he had ignored, and, perhaps, embark on a path that truly meant giving back? As he stood there, the burden of his past poised to crush him, the world he once owned now lay in the balance, teetering on the edge of a pivotal decision, one that could either condemn him or, for the first time in years, set him free. Jake Sullivan stood frozen at the intersection of his past and a potential future he could hardly imagine. The sterile walls of the clinic felt like a prison, its formality contrasting sharply with the raw emotions weaving through the hallways. Each step he took toward Lily and her grandmother felt heavier than the last, as if the remnants of his corporate success clung to his limbs with a paralyzing weight. He blinked, shaking away the creeping self-doubt that enveloped him. He had often dismissed people like Lily as mere narratives, a blip in the complex spreadsheet of his life. Yet here she was, embodying resilience and vulnerability in stark relief against the pragmatism he had cloaked himself in for years. The world he had built with ruthless ambition stood to be dismantled by a single, innocent request. And it terrified him. Jake reached the small room where Lily sat, her eyes fixated on her grandmother's frail form. A distinct sense of longing pierced through him. He had long since forgotten how to navigate emotions deep and genuine. He cleared his throat, trying to regain some semblance of control. "Hi, Lily," he whispered, his voice wavering slightly. She turned to him, her gaze flickering with a mix of hope and apprehension. "Will you help us?" she asked, her voice barely breaking the silence, yet holding an undeniable power. He nodded mechanically, but his mind churned. Committing to this path felt daunting. As he stared into her earnest eyes, an instinctive part of him began to awaken. Could he do more than just provide financial assistance? His thoughts raced through fragmented memories, a childhood spent in the shadows of a single mother, scraping to get by. He realized that had he been in Lily's position once, would anyone have stepped in to look beyond the numbers? The fleeting whispers of love and warmth from his existence felt distant yet necessary to confront. Suddenly, he leaned closer, letting vulnerability seep into the small space between them. "What does your grandma need?" The question felt like a slow unraveling of years of conditioned distance. He could feel the emotional armor clashing with his desire to connect, the battle within himself now pulsing with urgency. "Medicine," she replied, her lips quivering as if the gravity of her situation was finally being realized. "She needs it really badly, and we can't afford it." Jake's heart dipped in sync with her resolve, igniting a flame of responsibility that he hadn't felt in years. The complexity of wealth loomed over him like a shroud. He thought of the countless decisions he had made that had brought him to this moment, calculations devoid of empathy. But was it enough simply to fund another transaction? The gnawing question turned into a rumble within him. What if he shifted gears? He envisioned a different approach, not merely as a benefactor, but as a participant in reshaping lives. What if he took a step beyond financial relief and explored how he could help rebuild their entire community? That thought propelled him forward. He wasn't just supporting a child, he could champion for transformation. Could this be the shift he so desperately needed? As he pondered, the concept of his wealth morphed from a gilded chain into a tool for healing. "Lily, I want to help," he said, tasting the words carefully. "Not just today, but for the long term. I'll make sure you have what you need." Lily's eyes widened in disbelief, hope washing over her features as a smile broke through. But even as her joy flooded his senses, the implications of his promise pressed against his essence. A flickering light ahead beckoned him further into uncharted territory. He now stood at the precipice of personal transformation, albeit terrified but exhilarated. Yet, as he took the first steps down this new path, Jake felt a shift in responsibility. He was no longer merely a millionaire, he was becoming something more, something that could possibly redeem him. But what challenges awaited him on this untested road? The moment of realization came crashing in. The time had come to face not just the darkness of his past, but the fears of his newfound convictions. What if the very community he wished to help turned their back on him? The weight of impending judgment loomed, coiling tightly around him as he prepared to reach out further than ever before. Jake left the clinic, his mind still immersed in thoughts of Lily and her grandmother. He could feel the weight of the promise he had made settling like a heavy cloak on his shoulders. It was a stark reminder of the new path he had chosen, one fraught with uncertainty and social trepidation. As he sat in his sleek car, the contrast between his opulent life and the stark reality Lily faced struck him as painfully dissonant. He engaged the engine, the robust roar echoing against the silence enveloping him. Driving through the familiar streets, a sense of dislocation gripped him. They no longer felt as welcoming. Each block he passed pulsed in vivid contrast to the sterile confines of the clinic, reminding him of what success had meant: an insulated existence, blind to suffering. The thought gnawed at him. Before long, he arrived at his luxurious penthouse. It loomed above the city, a physical embodiment of achievement tinged with looming emptiness. As he stepped inside, the usual immediate comforts, the plush leather couch, the high-end art pieces, felt like shackles rather than symbols of success. Sitting alone in the dim, spacious room, he questioned the nature of his wealth. Was it truly achievement, or a barricade against the very life experiences that could give him depth? An impulsive decision surged through him. He needed to act now, before the doubts crept back in. He kicked off his shoes and grabbed a pen, scrawling notes on an empty notepad. How could he offer genuine assistance? Not just a one-time transaction, but something that could instigate real change. His strategic mind leapt into gear, formulating plans that felt unaccustomed yet invigorating. Could he partner with local businesses to fund Lily's grandma's medicine? Start small and see if those investments returned in broader ways? The mere idea of collaboration ignited excitement within him, a fiery contrast to the sterile confines of mere transactional relationships he had previously thrived on. But reflections quickly returned to the fears that haunted him. He felt exposure to ridicule. The high society he belonged to thrived on appearances, and now Jake Sullivan, the ultra-wealthy businessman, was becoming a community advocate. What if they scorned his efforts? Would they interpret his change as superficial or an act of desperation? In the world he had maneuvered through, vulnerability was a weakness, and that scared him profoundly. Another round of self-reflection hit. What would becoming this new version of himself require? He could no longer be the dispassionate investor. He would need to engage with people, hear their stories, confront his own biases. Could he articulate the purpose behind his efforts in a way that resonated and not sounded like hollow altruism? The following morning, he drove to the community center that Lily had mentioned. The building felt foreign yet inviting, a reminder of a world he had long neglected. Upon entering, he encountered the invigorating scent of coffee mingled with the upbeat sounds of laughter and conversations. As he walked through, he noticed a bulletin board plastered with vibrant photos of local events, achievements, and companionship, each image a deceptive mirror to his solitary romanticized success. A woman approached him, her brows slightly arched. "Can I help you?" He hesitated, the words teetering on the edge of his tongue. "I'm looking to talk about ways to support this community," he finally managed, the statement heavy with doubt yet persistent resolve. The woman studied him, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "You're not from around here, are you?" He steeled himself, recognizing the weight of her skepticism. "No, but I want to understand. I want to help." The challenge hung in the air like an unwelcome tension, demanding affirmation. This conversation could either cement his intentions or unravel them amid scrutiny. The inflection in her voice shifted, curiosity peaking as she leaned slightly closer. "What do you really want, Jake?" Caught by her piercing gaze, a rush surged within him. The reflection of uncertainty stared back. Could he truly articulate the depth of his intentions, or was he merely a man grasping for validation? As he prepared to respond, the door flew open, and a boisterous group of children poured inside, chattering energetically, pulling the woman's attention. It was a momentary diversion, yet Jake felt a fire ignite. A rush of clarity swept over him. He had shifted from observer to participant, but the lesson eluded him still, lurking just beneath the surface. The symphonic mix of laughter nudged open his self-doubt, surfacing a new realization. Engaging with this community would be a difficult but transformational journey for them both. Yet, a palpable challenge loomed within him. How would he prove himself worthy of their trust? The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily as he inhaled deeply. This was only the beginning, the road ahead fraught with questions and challenges he had yet to foresee. As conversations resumed around him, Jake stood at the threshold of an adventure far beyond mere financial equations, a roadmap to understanding humanity in all its messiness. But could he truly bridge the chasm between his past and this newly forming identity? His heart raced at the thought, recognizing that facing this unfamiliar terrain could either bring redemption or unveil deeper vulnerabilities. Yet, amid the bustling energy, a darker revelation loomed over him. What if he failed? What if, in pursuing this new quest of empowerment, he stumbled and fell hardest of all? The uncertainty nagged persistently, readying him for the next hurdle he would confront. Just as determination began to take hold, a raspy voice broke through the animated chatter. "So, you think you can just waltz in here and make a difference, huh?" The challenge resonated, heavy with skepticism. Jake turned to face the impressive figure looming over him. The moment felt pivotal. Could he confront this obstacle and truly connect with the community he wished to uplift? Would he rise to the occasion, or retreat back into the safe confines of the life he knew? Jake felt the weight of the stranger's scrutiny, a palpable force folding around him. The woman standing before him, her arms crossed and expression hard, radiated a challenge he could hardly ignore. "This isn't a charity, you know," she pressed, her tone laced with indignation. "You want to get credit for doing good just because you have money." He opened his mouth, ready to argue, but then he paused. The way she spoke, like a guardian of a sacred space brimming with lives he barely understood, gave him pause. Here he was, a wealthy man hoping to weave himself into a tapestry where every thread represented struggle, resilience, and real need. She was right, he had to convince her not just with words but with actions, illustrating he would stay for more than just a fleeting moment. "Then let me earn my way," Jake replied, the conviction surprising even himself. "What can I do to demonstrate I'm sincere?" The woman, surprised but not yet disarmed, studied him cautiously. "Talk is cheap. You want to help? Start by volunteering tomorrow. There are always needs." A flicker of anxiety twisted in his gut. Volunteering, one of the simplest yet often most difficult ways to connect. The idea of rolling up his sleeves and stepping away from the comfortable desk job he had crafted felt foreign and daunting. He didn't know the first thing about community engagement. What if he was terrible at it? What if, in trying to help, he only embarrassed himself? Yet it was that very unease that pushed him. What did he truly fear? Perhaps what haunted him more than the thought of failure was remaining stagnant, continuing on the path paved with exquisite but hollow successes. "Tomorrow it is," he said, surprising himself with his own decisiveness. As he walked home later that day, the city lights flared with a different brightness. They no longer sparkled just as symbols of wealth but as reflections of opportunities and experiences he had yet to tap into. Each step felt charged with a nascent electricity, a reminder that he was forging ahead, nerve by nerve, into uncharted territory. Jake spent his night in introspection, jotting down questions. What skills did he possess that could connect him more directly with others? He began to envision ways to align his professional acumen with community needs. What if he set up financial workshops for less privileged residents? His mind raced, weaving new ideas and possibilities as he immersed in the intricacies of personal finance and human connection. But excitement dimmed into worry as he considered potential roadblocks. What did he know of their struggles, of the subtle nuances of their lives? He relentlessly fought the rising discomfort, reminding himself change required discomfort. The next morning, Jake arrived at the community space with timidity coiling at his insides. Clutching a backpack with supplies ready for use, he stepped inside, whispering a quiet mantra of determination with each stride. He was here to contribute, and he wouldn't retreat at the first sign of challenge. As the day unfolded, Jake found himself positioned between children painting verdant landscapes and adults engaged in skill-building workshops. His role shifted rapidly, and he discovered latent abilities he hadn't recognized. It wasn't just that he could teach finance basics or navigate complex investment jargon, he could listen. He found that opening up his ears unleashed a swell of empathy he'd long forgotten. Amid organizing art supplies, he met a young boy named Marco, whose laugh sent a wave of warmth through the gray atmosphere of bustling activity. The boy was creating something vibrant and alive, a sharp contrast to Jake's own seemingly colorless world of profits and losses. "Hey, what are you making?" Jake leaned down, intrigued by the wild strokes of color splattering from Marco's brush. "A castle." Marco beamed, his eyes sparkling with creativity and hope. Jake felt a tug within that transcended the superficial connection he'd always maintained. Moments with children like Marco weren't mere interactions, they were learning experiences that expanded his understanding of innocence, unfiltered joy, and dreams. In that moment, Jake realized that the rich tapestry of life wasn't solely woven through personal achievements but through shared experiences. But just as he was beginning to revel in this newfound connection, a shadow fell across the interaction. The earlier woman appeared, arms crossed again, her demeanor mirroring an unlit caution. "You seem to be having fun. Just remember, this isn't a playground for you to play at." Her reminder jolted him, and defiance bubbled up. It was a clear signal. She was still watching, still doubting. "I'm not playing," Jake shot back, igniting an intensity he hadn't expected to feel. "I'm here to learn and to contribute. I'm not leaving until I prove that." The weight of her expectation, the need to show up not just for himself but also for those he sought to help, pressed heavily on his shoulders. He realized then that the skepticism was a shared burden, their histories interlinked by judgment and the need to prove oneself. As silence enveloped them momentarily, Jake drew a breath, preparing to bridge the gap between their worlds. Whoever he had been, standing in that doorway, was no longer who he hoped to be. He was on the precipice of transformation, armed with the will to open up and confront what lay ahead. How could he solidify that desire, break down barriers not just for himself but for others too? And maybe more challenging, how would he navigate the rising winds of doubt pushing against him from both the outside and within? The air felt charged, resonating with anticipation. Each choice ahead stood like a fork in the road, demanding decision and action. As they regarded one another, Jake sensed the weight of the next test looming closer. Would this turning point lead him into deeper connection, or would residual skepticism suffocate the steps he had only just found strength to take? The path forward was unclear, but he was committed now, a prize weighed against a newfound vulnerability. And yet, uncertainty still lurked, whispering shadows of doubt as he braced for the clash of his growing determination against the skepticism that refused to lift. What would be the true measure of his metamorphosis? Jake stood poised at the edge of uncertainty, skirting the chasm between the life he had known and the one he yearned to embrace. The weight of the woman's gaze felt heavier than before, a tangible reminder of the expectations looming over him. Her words echoed in his mind, a persistent chant that stirred both fear and resolve. Proving himself wasn't merely a matter of showing up, it demanded authenticity, commitment, and perhaps a self-reflection he'd long evaded. As the day unfurled around him, Jake found solace in the chaotic warmth of the community space. The laughter of children mixed with the hum of serious conversations, crafting an atmosphere brimming with potential. However, he wasn't prepared for the sudden turn that would force him to confront his values head-on. Late in the afternoon, while assisting with a finance workshop, an unexpected voice emerged. "Mister, can you help me?" A young girl, no older than 8, tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide with curiosity and urgency. She clutched a tattered notebook, pages dog-eared and frayed. "What's the matter?" Jake knelt, meeting her gaze with genuine interest. "I want to save up for a bicycle. I don't have enough money, and my mom says we can't buy it," she explained, her voice wavering. As she spoke, her dreams seemed to float between them, fragile yet fierce. This request, so simple yet layered with complexity, cut deeper than he anticipated. "How much do you need?" he asked, grappling with both the depth of her situation and his growing desire to help. $50, she replied, tears glistening as she opened the notebook to reveal clumsy sketches of bicycles and stars, her ambitions laid bare. Jake's heart constricted at her innocence contrasted with the harshness of reality. Here was someone who didn't just need knowledge, she needed a lifeline, a moment of connection that could spark tangible change. "What if we set up a little plan? You could save a bit each week, and I'll help you out with the rest," he proposed, surprised by the conviction coursing through his voice. It wasn't just about the money, it was about empowering her to envision a future. The girl's eyes lit up, a fleeting glimpse of joy that sent warmth radiating through Jake's chest. Yet the moment was interrupted when the same woman from earlier stepped forward, her brows furrowed in disapproval. "Just handing out cash isn't the solution. You'll only end up creating dependency, not fostering growth," she interjected, her tone sharp enough to cut through his burgeoning resolve. "We can teach financial literacy, help her plan," Jake countered, sensing frustration boiling beneath the surface. "You think you can solve problems with dollars?" "It's deeper than that," she challenged, her stance unwavering. Jake inhaled deeply, wrestling with doubts that threatened to undermine his progress. Her words coaxed forth a reflection on the role he wanted to play. It wasn't just about his intentions, it was about understanding the ramifications of his actions. "Then help me understand," he said, his tone softening. "What's the better way to support her?" The woman's defensiveness wavered slightly, and he caught a flicker of respect in her expression. This was their turning point, not just a confrontation but an opening to dialogue. "If you truly want to help," she began, her voice steadier, "then involve her in the process. Let her learn the value of earning, budgeting, and saving. That's empowerment." Jake's mind raced, adrenaline pulsing through him. Here was a chance to shift the narrative not just for the girl but for himself. He could move beyond surface-level engagement and dive deep into the transformational power of education. "Yes," Jake stated, buoyed by a newfound clarity. "Let us help her understand how to create her own success. Not just with money, but with skills." With that decision resonating through him, the atmosphere shifted. The young girl, still uncertain, watched closely as the woman began to delineate a plan for saving, budgeting, and eventually purchasing that bicycle. Jake could feel the momentum building, a collective stepping stone towards teaching resilience and self-sufficiency. But as the conversation deepened, Jake was also confronted by the fractiousness of self-doubt. Could he truly guide others while grappling with his own insecurities? Would his past define him as just a millionaire wanting a redemption arc, or could he be a genuine catalyst for change? After the session ended, as the weight of those questions settled back in, Jake stepped outside to collect his thoughts. The cool air struck his face, invigorating yet heavy with the uncharted questions simmering within him. How could he maintain this newfound focus on empowerment while wrestling with the shadows of his previous self? Every confrontation revealed not just his weaknesses but a burgeoning capacity for leadership within the community. And just as he pondered his next steps, he caught the woman's scrutinizing gaze across the street, her expression inscrutable. Did she see potential in him, or was he still stuck in the shadows of skepticism? The moment hung suspended before him, ripe with possibility. Jake realized he was merely at the beginning of a journey that would continually challenge his resolve and redefine his worth. What awaited him next was not only a test of character but also a chance to explore the true meaning of legacy in ways he had not yet envisioned. As he prepared to return, a spark ignited within. He was determined to prove his mettle, not just to himself but to those around him. But with this desire came an undeniable tension. Would he sink under the weight of expectation, or would he rise, empowered by his reflections and the wisdom of those he hoped to help? The crossroads loomed ahead, each choice carrying the potential to reshape not just his path, but perhaps the lives of others as well. The next morning, Jake awoke with a knot of anticipation twisting in his gut. The remnants of yesterday's exchange with the girl lingered, intertwining with the woman's pointed advice. His mind narrowed onto a singular point. It was no longer enough to desire change, he had to embody it. The shadows of his past were close, but so was an opportunity to step into a role that demanded resilience and authenticity. As he made his way to the community space, determination coursed through him. The sun cast hopeful beams through the trees lining the street, illuminating the path ahead. Each step felt like a decisive act, an intentional movement towards a new chapter. Upon arrival, the bustling environment seemed to pulse with energy. The girl he had spoken to, Ellie, was already there, her notebook clutched tightly. She was animatedly explaining her dreams to another volunteer, her enthusiasm infectious. Jake's heart warmed at the sight, but beneath that warmth lay a flicker of anxiety. He needed to cultivate this energy into something sustainable. "Ellie," he called, breaking into her conversation. She turned, her face lighting up at the sight of him. "Do you remember our plan?" "Yeah," she cheered, bouncing on her toes. "I've already saved $10. His chest swelled with pride and a fierce longing to ensure she not only achieved her goal but learned invaluable skills along the way. That's fantastic. Let us build on that. How about we sit down together and create a proper budget? Ellie nodded vigorously, her eyes shining bright with ambition. Leading her to a quiet corner of the room felt like a small act of empowerment, but it was going to challenge him as much as it challenged her. As they settled down with a scrap of paper and a pen, the woman from yesterday observed from a distance, her critical gaze still present. Jake could feel the weight of her scrutiny, and with it, the realization that he had a responsibility. Ellie was not just a project, she was a beacon illuminating his deeper purpose. Okay, Ellie, he began, voice steady but laced with the urgency of the moment. What do you think you can do to save more each week? Her brow furrowed in thought, then she replied, I could do chores for my neighbors, like walking their dogs or washing their cars. That's a great idea. He encouraged, excitement bubbling within him. You could even track your earnings in that notebook. He pointed at her collection of doodles. Every week, we'll add up what you made and see how close you get to your goal. As they planned, Jake found himself reflecting on his past ventures. The decision-making skills he had relied on during his corporate climbs suddenly took on new dimensions. These were not just about profit margins but about purpose, impact, and nurturing self-agency in another person. Despite the thrill of the moment, self-doubt clawed back into his mind. Could he manage this balance of personal growth and mentorship? Was he genuinely invested in Ellie's success, or was it a bid to redeem a life he could no longer identify with? He kept these reflections at bay, choosing instead to focus on Ellie's enthusiasm that resonated louder. Just then, the woman approached, cutting into the fragile bubble Jake had created. There was no longer distance between them, this was the moment that would define the future path of his engagement in the community. I'm impressed with your efforts, Jake, she stated, her tone still sharp but softened by an unusual gentleness. But remember, it's important not to take over her vision. Guide her, but let her steer her own ship. Absolutely, Jake replied, inhaling the reminder. I want her to be empowered, not dependent. Her eyes narrowed, studying him for sincerity. Then make sure what you teach her invests in her decision-making ability. Children need to feel ownership of their actions, she advised, nodding towards Ellie, who doodled away with glee. Jake considered her words carefully. This was a pivotal moment, a true test of his commitment to transformation, not just his own, but in Ellie's world as well. This wasn't merely about mentorship, it was a responsibility to cultivate self-reliance amidst the challenges life threw their way. As the day progressed, Jake was surprised at how naturally the conversation inched toward deeper learning and engagement. Ellie's budding determination illuminated a path of growth he hadn't fully anticipated. But just as they seemed to reach a rhythm, Jake sensed the looming complications of his past, intertwining with aspirations for a clearer future. Echoes of his previous life whispered concerns. Could he protect Ellie from the same pitfalls that had once ensnared him? Would his current motivations be enough to guide others while navigating through his turmoil? The moment was thick with potential yet fraught with uncertainty. Jake realized he had a choice to make. Would he forge forward with unwavering conviction, confronting the specters of his past, or would he retreat into familiar fears? Gathering his resolve, he took a deep breath, looking at Ellie, who peered back with pure hope. The stakes had been raised, and the challenge of authenticity set before him. Lead with conviction amidst self-doubt, based on the lessons he discovered, or risk drifting back into the shadows. Because as he prepared to return to the drawing board, the questions loomed larger than ever. Was his desire for redemption genuine, or merely an escape from his past failures? How would he navigate the line between helping someone else to thrive and the latent insecurities that could derail both their journeys? As the clock ticked toward their next session, Jake felt the stirrings of possibility, yet dreaded the choices he had yet to confront. Jake sat at the rickety table, scribbling notes into Ellie's brightly decorated notebook. The crumpled paper was filled with her cheerful drawings, but it was also absorbing the significant details of their budget discussions, the earnest dreams of a child eager to make her mark. This simple exchange stirred a profound sense of responsibility within him, forcing him to confront elements of his character he had tried to submerge. As Ellie talked about chores, an unexpected shift occurred within Jake. Her enthusiasm spilled over, touching on the parts of his life he feared had withered in the pursuits of corporate wins and accolades. The gnawing thought resurfaced: what if he, too, could be like Ellie, unburdened by life's complexities and unashamedly hopeful for change? "All right, Ellie," he said, forcing himself to rein in the dogged self-doubt. "Let us take stock of your skills. We'll figure out a way to quantify your efforts." A sudden burst of inspiration ignited within him, pushing past his hesitation. "What if we create a simple chart? You can tally the tasks you complete each week." Her eyes widened with excitement. "That's a great idea, Jake." The moment felt pivotal to Jake, not just in their partnership, but his own burgeoning understanding of mentorship. He could see Ellie metamorphosing into a future risk-taker. This was more than just saving money for a game, they were architecting a foundation for her resilience. Yet as Ellie beamed and drew her tally chart, the specter of his past loomed closer, its shadow dragging behind him as a reminder of failure. Doubts pounded against the walls of his mind. Was this endeavor merely a psychological exercise, or was he genuinely equipping Ellie for real-world scenarios? Should he dare invest fully in this, only to find himself feigning hope? No, he had to shed his fears, to remain present for Ellie. But then, thoughts of his own adult struggles surfaced. Would his attempts at growth truly change anything? Shaking off his worries, he asked Ellie about her dreams beyond the immediate goal. "What do you want to do when you have enough money?" "No idea," she chirped, drawing a large star around an unfinished sentence. "But I want to help others, like you do." A sharp intake of breath raised the tension in Jake's chest. Help others? Could he cultivate a legacy rooted not in material success, but genuine connection? Here lay a pivotal moment where his aspirations aligned with Ellie's innocent ambitions. He wanted to reinforce her desire to help, yet how could he convey the balance of giving and self-preservation? The woman observed him still, her presence a constant reminder of the responsibilities that came with this role. As he met her gaze, he felt the weight of understanding. She wasn't just an observer, she was a catalyst for his transformation. "Remember, Ellie," he said, instinctively lowering his voice to match the seriousness of the moment, "helping others also means knowing how to stand up for yourself." He paused before adding softly, "I learned that the hard way." The nod she gave in response told him she absorbed his message, but Jake knew he needed to reflect deeply on his own narratives. Each anecdote he shared should be a lesson, not just confessions of past failures. The line between mentorship and personal testimony blurred as he pondered how exposed he truly wished to become. The day began to wind down, and his heart raced with the awareness of how fundamental these discussions were about not only Ellie's future but about how he navigated his own destiny. He had come here in search of redemption, but this child led him down a path he'd yet to explore fully. This connection ignited a fierce determination within him, fueling his desire for meaningful growth. Just as he pondered the implications of his engagement with her, a sudden thought caught him off guard. Perhaps his role was not to redeem himself but to illuminate the path for Ellie in ways he had not navigated himself. He was confronting issues he had long buried. The moment was heavier than expected, fraught with a realization that while he guided Ellie, he simultaneously was confronting his most vulnerable truths. As he prepared to leave, the promise of tomorrow hung in the air. The moment promised potential but also danger. Venturing further into this mentorship could propel him or unearth hidden insecurities that threatened to derail him once more. Was he ready to face what lay ahead? Would he hold his past close as a crutch, or empower Ellie to push beyond boundaries he believed were immutable? Jake glanced at Ellie, still scribbling in her notebook, and felt a new determination rise within him. The next meeting would require vulnerability and conviction far more than he had anticipated when they began. While he battled against the burgeoning fear, he could sense that the time had come to not just talk but act. What awaited them both in this new chapter loomed larger than life. Would they both emerge stronger, or would the ghosts of their pasts prove too formidable to conquer? Jake awoke the next morning with the sunlight streaming into his room, a warm reminder that he was still moving forward. The weight of his responsibilities felt heavier than usual, yet there was an undercurrent of anticipation that propelled him out of bed. Sitting at his kitchen table, he stared at the tallies he and Ellie had created, a simple yet powerful visual of progress. Each mark represented more than chores, it signified potential, a shared journey, and the evolution of trust. His usual routine had begun to feel stilted, almost claustrophobic. The back-to-back meetings, endless emails, and polished presentations were replacing moments of genuine connection. He found the corporate buzz increasingly hollow, each success diminishing in value as the shadow of Ellie's aspirations loomed overhead. It wasn't just an innocent child's dream, it was a pivotal call to authenticity, a challenge he had unknowingly accepted. As he poured a cup of coffee, Jake contemplated the day ahead. His next meeting with Ellie was looming tantalizingly large in his mind. What if it became an inflection point not just for her, but for him? He envisioned asking her for feedback on his own aspirations, revealing vulnerabilities, and sharing personal goals. Would she be ready to support him? Jake's thoughts raced back to Ellie's ambition to help others. What if he harnessed that desire to shape their mentorship beyond financial numerics? He could guide her into social realms, where empathy transcends spreadsheets. His determination morphed into a community project they could undertake together, a way for Ellie to engage actively and for him to rediscover the meaningful connections he craved. But the nagging feeling of self-doubt reshuffled his convictions. What if he failed to uphold the responsibilities he was attempting to embrace? What if the project turned out to be another empty venture, one that his corporate persona had mastered? These questions sprang into his mind, each one fostering a weight he nearly buckled under. Realizing he couldn't let fear define this pivotal moment, he grasped his phone and composed a text to Ellie. "Hey, how about we brainstorm some ideas for helping our community today?" He pressed send without overthinking, committing himself to the uncertainties of vulnerability. Arriving at their next meeting, he was met with Ellie's wide-eyed excitement. She bounced in her seat, a beacon of unfiltered joy. It dawned on him then that she was watching him just as intently as he was observing her. This exchange was more than skill building, it was a test of resilience and adaptability for both of them. "Okay, Ellie," he began, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Let's think about how you can use your talents to help others. What do you think really matters to people?" "Maybe, cleaning up the park?" she suggested, brow furrowed in thought. Jake's heart swelled at her initiative. "That's a great start. Why do you think that matters?" "Because if it's clean, kids like me can play without getting hurt," she exclaimed, her conviction growing. He felt a flood of warmth at her insight. This was more than just a project, it was an opportunity to cultivate a sense of agency in Ellie, teaching her to look beyond her desires towards collective needs. But underneath this excitement lay a flickering flame of doubt. Was he truly equipped to facilitate this transition? As they delved deeper into the mechanics of their plan, Jake began to sense the murmur of his past anxieties rising. The specter of his previous failures challenged his newfound purpose. Would he have the strength to follow through, or would hesitation again overshadow his intentions? "Let us promise to evaluate every step together," he proposed, pulling Ellie's attention back to him. "If it ever feels overwhelming, we'll talk. Deal?" "Deal," she affirmed, her smile radiant and infectious. But in that moment, an undeniable revelation struck him. He was facilitating not just her journey, but his own self-discovery as well. With each choice they made together, both he and Ellie were weaving themselves into stories of resilience. As their brainstorming session folded into a plan, Jake felt the ground shift beneath him. Could this be his path to redemption? But with every leap they took together, he felt a tightening in his chest, a question echoing louder than before. Was he ready to embrace the full scope of this responsibility? What new challenges awaited as they drew closer to their shared goal? Would past insecurities threaten to overshadow the bright potential ahead? The promise of collaboration hung delicately in the air, fraught with possibilities and the uncertain weight of vulnerability. Jake sat across from Ellie in their favorite corner of the park, a bright blue canvas of clear sky above them. The air was crisp, filled with the sounds of laughter from children playing in the distance. It should have felt peaceful, yet Jake fidgeted with the notebook in front of him, anxieties creeping back in. Their plan to revitalize the neglected park had begun with fervor, the two of them sketching out ideas full of color and life on that empty page. But now darkness lurked beneath the surface. The weight of expectation bore down on him, pulling him away from the buoyant excitement Ellie radiated. He decommitted to something big, something transformative, and the self-doubt that shrouded him felt palpable. "Jake, what should we do next?" Ellie's eyes sparkled with possibility as she leaned forward, her enthusiasm unwavering. But his mind was a maelstrom, questioning everything. Could he truly back her up in this? Was his vision enough to carry both their aspirations? Resisting the urge to claw back into safe retreat was becoming increasingly difficult. "Let us break down what we need to do," he replied, forcing out the words. "We can start by gathering supplies and getting volunteers." His voice struggled to match Ellie's fervor, and he hated how uncertainty chipped away at his authority. This was supposed to be a partnership. Yet, deep down, he felt the weight of leadership without the confidence to uphold it. "What if we asked our neighbors to join us? Maybe they'd like to help," she suggested, her eyes lighting up with excitement. The idea, however, spiraled into another torrent of doubt inside him. Would they care? Would they actually want to join in? His reluctance began to manifest externally, his hand nervously writing down the logistics she laid out. "There's no harm in asking," Ellie continued, her voice firm as if sensing his inner turmoil. "Even if just a few people show up, it'll be okay. We'll make a difference together." Her optimism clashed magnificently with his reluctance, reminding him of the core of his mission. This wasn't about grand impacts or financial calculations. It was about connection, presence, and purpose, layers that had been eroded in his corporate life. He felt a small shift within him, a glimmer of hope sparked by her conviction. "Can we call our neighbors tonight?" Her enthusiasm tugged at him once more. The warmth in her smile reignited that fragile strength within, pushing him closer to a commitment he'd previously balked at. "Yes, we can." The words emerged stronger than he anticipated. "Tonight it is." But as the reality of that simple statement settled in, the clock began ticking in his mind. What if the neighbors turned him down? What if they laughed at his idea? The possibility of failure loomed closer than ever, and the thought acted as a suffocating blanket. "Can I share something with you?" Jake leaned in toward Ellie, his heart racing as vulnerability surfaced. "I feel scared sometimes. I worry that I won't make this work, or that it'll fall apart completely." Ellie regarded him with unyielding innocence. "But it's okay to be scared. We can be scared together." That simple assertion broke through the final defenses he held tightly around himself. "You're right," he realized. "And we don't have to be perfect." He could feel a warmth blossom in his chest, a reminder that embracing uncertainty was part of this journey. They would face it side by side. The laughter of children from the playground cascaded through the air as they mapped out their evening plans, transforming hesitation into action. The daunting prospect of knocking on doors no longer felt insurmountable. Together they could face whatever came their way. As they finalized their ideas, Jake's phone buzzed beside him. It was a reminder for one of his corporate meetings, a signal from his other world, where structure promised safety but stifled the very human experiences he craved. He glanced at it, swallowing a lump of conflict in his throat. "Jake?" Ellie's voice broke through his preoccupation. "Are you with me?" "Yes, I am." But a nagging thought surfaced. Was he truly ready to let go of the safety net? As Ellie smiled back, he felt a deep stirring within. In the ensuing moments of laughter and brainstorming, Jake couldn't shake the urgency of the decision looming ahead. What if that meeting was a crossroads, forcing him to choose between the life he had always known and the uncertain, rich tapestry of connection that lay ahead? The air around them thickened with a sense of impending change, and he realized there was no escaping the weight of his choices. A pivotal fork in the road was nearing, and he could almost sense the gravity pulling him toward an irretrievable shift. Would he take that leap into the unknown, and in doing so, would he finally uncover the depths of his own potential? The path unfolded before him, tangled with both fear and promise. But would he step boldly, or retreat into familiar darkness? The moment drew nearer with every heartbeat, an unquestionable clarity forming in his mind. This decision could redefine everything for him and for Ellie. Jake stood at the threshold of transformation, the sun casting a warm glow through the park trees as he prepared for what lay ahead. The pivotal moment of reaching out to the neighbors with Ellie had arrived, rich with promise and fraught with fear. This was not merely about a community project, it was a test of his will, an exploration of his authentic self against the shadows of his past. As he and Ellie approached the first door, determination coursed through him. Each knock resonated with the weight of his intentions. This is about more than just cleaning up the park, he reassured himself, his heart racing. It's about stepping into a community that needs more than just money. The first response was lukewarm, a disinterested glance and polite excuses. Jake felt his pulse quicken, the memories of his past failures swirling uncomfortably within him. Yet Ellie's unwavering optimism stood in stark contrast to his rising doubt. "Let us try the next house," she chirped, her resolve refreshing his own faltering spirit. As they continued, mixed responses flowed. Some neighbors dismissed them outright, while others showed interest, curiosity mixed with skepticism. But as they engaged, one neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, leaned in, her expression shifting from caution to intrigue. "Tell me more about this idea of yours," she prompted, eyes sparkling with a hint of hope. Jake took a deep breath, the words flowing with unprecedented clarity. "We want to revitalize the park, a place where families can truly enjoy the outdoors. It's about making this neighborhood reflect the vibrant life within it." The more he spoke, the more he realized he was not merely presenting another philanthropic venture, he was inviting his neighbors to be part of something greater. Each conversation built him up, shoring up turns of self-doubt with commitment. By day's end, they had garnered a small cohort of volunteers for their initiative, a tangible achievement that solidified their intentions. The cumulative energy of those who joined them on this path sparked a profound sense of belonging in Jake, one he had spent years cultivating in corporate confines but never truly experienced in community. With each interaction, Jake was unraveling layers of himself he had long tucked away. The superficial measures of success that once governed his life seemed trivial now. He realized true achievement was woven through collaboration, commitment, and shared aspirations. As the project progressed in subsequent days, the transformation took root not just in the park but within Jake himself. He helped organize, contribute resources, and listen authentically. The shadows of his past crept back occasionally, but he confronted them with resilience, leaning on the relationships he was forging. Ellie's joy was infectious, her unwavering belief in the project illuminating their path. They spent countless hours together, counting savings, setting expectations, and understanding how they could serve their community actively. One evening, as they cleaned up the park, Jake witnessed Ellie leading a group of children in playful organization. He felt a swell of pride, not just for the project but for the burgeoning leader she was becoming. This realization struck, mentorship was reciprocal, through techniques and perspectives shared, he was becoming a better version of himself. The ultimate validation came when the project culminated in a community gathering to celebrate their work. Hundreds appeared, laughter and joy filled the atmosphere. The park, once forgotten, brimmed with life. Jake was overwhelmed by a sense of belonging he had never known. When Ellie turned to him, eyes alight with excitement, he realized he had achieved more than he could have dreamed of. "Look at all we've done, Jake," she exclaimed, embodying every ounce of youthful optimism. "Yes," Jake replied, voice steady, savoring the moment. "This is just the beginning." He stood taller, solid confidence forging through the residual echoes of his former self. Jake Sullivan was not just a millionaire anymore, he was a community member, an advocate, a mentor, and most importantly an individual who had conquered his fears to embrace the fullness of life. As he savored this achievement, a sense of fulfillment washed over him. He had transformed not just a park, but his own heart. The shadows of doubt were replaced by a fervent belief that change could begin with small, intentional steps, driven by empathy and purpose. This was his achievement, an acknowledgement of what he could become, a legacy embraced through genuine investment in others. The future lay before him, bright and uncharted, but he was ready. The moments of doubt had forged a stronger identity, one recognized not by financial accomplishments but genuine human connection. Now was the time for action. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support us in sharing these inspirational journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative conclusion, sharing exactly how you feel. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful revelation. Don't wait even one more second. Show your support for authentic personal overcoming stories.